Okay, let's dive in. We're stepping into, that arena of public figures and these unexpected clashes.
Right, the kind that just blow up on social media.
Exactly. It feels like getting a front row seat to some high-stakes political drama unfolding tweet by tweet almost in real time.
And, well, often these moments, these really public things, analysts see them as revealing much deeper currents, right? Stuff bubbling below the surface.
Totally. So today our source material is actually an analysis from a YouTube video. It takes a close look at some recent pretty public statements by Elon Musk.
Yeah, specifically targeting Donald Trump and also this big congressional spending bill.
And this source, it presents what it sees as a really sudden and dramatic shift in the dynamic between Musk and Trump. It digs into the context that's been reported.
Analyzes the, let's say, sharp language used.
Definitely sure. And offers its interpretation of the political reactions, the potential motivations driving it all.
So our mission for this deep dive is basically to guide you, the listener, through the key points and interpretations that this specific source highlights.
Yeah, we're going to unpack some pretty surprising claims they make, stuff about what might have been happening behind the scenes and how these public statements are being viewed, through a particular political lens. At least that's how the source lays it out.
And just a heads up, you'll hear some very strong opinions here. It's important to remember these are the opinions and the analysis presented within the source we're looking at today.
Good point. Okay, so let's start right where the source kicks things off. The event it seems to identify as the trigger.
Which is Elon Musk publicly lashing out at Donald Trump. Seems pretty direct.
And the source immediately offers a theory for why this might have happened right then. It points to reporting from NBC News, suggesting that Musk's special government employee status, that capacity with the White House, wasn't extended. It ran out after its 130-day period.
Right. And the source's interpretation of that NBC report, they basically say Musk was effectively fired by Donald Trump.
Yeah, effectively fired. Framing this public outburst as a reaction to being fired, well, that's a pretty strong narrative the source puts forward right away.
Definitely. And then they zero in on a specific tweet from Musk, one that seemed to, grab a lot of attention.
Which one was that?
Sent at 1:31 p.m. on a Tuesday. It just read, "I just can't stand it anymore."
Wow. I just can't stand it anymore. Simple, but potent. And the source frames this tweet pretty vividly, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. They describe Musk as the most disturbed holder of the title richest person in the world.
That's quite a label.
It is. And to give context for that description and for the can't stand it tweet, the source brings in some past reporting.
Okay, like what?
They mention a New York Times report about Musk's alleged past drug use.
Yeah.
Atlas, ketamine, Adderall, psychedelic mushrooms, ecstasy, stuff like that. And they also note Musk's own public discussions about suffering from depression and, various disturbances. This is background the source uses to sort of interpret that public cry of frustration.
So the source is really leaning into connecting this public statement to elements of Musk's personal history, his reported struggles.
And they go even further. They compare this kind of open declaration of distress to historical figures, others who held the title of world's richest person.
Like who?
Like John D. Rockefeller or Mansa Musa. And the source claims that, based on their research, none of those guys ever made similar public statements. Not like this.
Interesting comparison. Okay, so before getting to what the source thinks was behind the tweet, they actually spend some time saying what it wasn't about, right?
Exactly. They clarify what, in their view, Musk was not talking about when he tweeted, "I just can't stand it anymore."
And this part gets quite specific, maybe even a bit provocative, based on the source's claims.
Yeah, they assert that Musk wasn't, expressing feelings of responsibility for negative impacts his actions might have had on people, say, in Africa.
Okay.
They mention changes affecting USAID, the United States Agency for International Development, which the source calls the largest famine relief provider. They're saying that wasn't it.
Gotcha. So the source is ruling out certain motivations.
Right. And they even reference Bill Gates. They report Gates once described Musk as, and this is a quote, "the world's richest man killing the world's poorest children."
Whoa.
Yeah. But the source's analysis is that even this kind of heavy global impact stuff wasn't what was bothering Musk in that moment when he sent the tweet.
Okay, so if the source says it wasn't about global impact or responsibility, what do they claim was driving Musk's frustration? What's their main interpretation?
Well, their central interpretation, the core of it, is that the "I just can't stand it anymore" statement and just the broader lashing out, it was fundamentally driven by his disappointment in Donald Trump.
Okay, so it comes back to Trump in their view.
That's what they argue. And they build a specific timeline to back this up. According to the source, Musk was reportedly escorted out of the White House on a Friday before sunset.
Okay.
Then he stayed silent about Trump over the weekend and on the following Monday, the next business day.
Right.
Then the source claims he cracked on Tuesday, which they make a point of saying was day 134 of the Trump presidency, and that's when he launched his public attack on Trump.
Huh. That sequence. The reported departure, the silence, then the outburst just a few days later. The source presents that as pretty strong evidence for their interpretation, doesn't it?
It seems that way, yeah. That's the narrative they build.
So given this timeline and what the source sees as the trigger, what was the specific policy target? What was Musk actually angry about in those tweets?
The source identifies the target pretty clearly.
Yeah.
The massively outrageous pork-filled congressional spending bill.
Right. And the language Musk used, the source quotes it directly.
Oh, yeah. They quote him calling the bill a disgusting abomination.
Disgusting abomination. Strong words.
And he didn't stop there. He added, "Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it."
Okay, shame on those who voted for it. Now, here's where the source offers a really key interpretation of that quote, right?
Exactly. They read Musk's statement that shame and that message, "You know you did wrong. You know it." They say he's implicitly directing that straight at Donald Trump.
Why Trump specifically?
Their reasoning is that, according to the source, Trump told them, meaning Republicans, presumably to vote for the bill. So Musk saying shame on the voters is, by extension, shame on Trump for pushing it. That's the source's logic.
That's a significant interpretation, reading between the lines there to say Musk was really aiming at Trump. And what's also fascinating, as the source highlights, is Trump's reported reaction, or maybe the lack of one.
Yeah, the lack of reaction. The source states Trump said nothing, just silence in response to Musk's public attack.
And the source doesn't just note the silence, they interpret it very specifically.
Very specifically. They claim Trump's silence is the biggest expression of fear that he has.
Wow, silence equals fear. What kind of fear, according to the source?
Well, the source suggests Trump is afraid of a few things. Not getting more money from Musk down the line.
Okay, financial support.
Right. Also, maybe Musk using his money against Trump's preferred candidates, like in primaries.
Political interference.
And maybe even Musk convincing Republican members of Congress not to vote for the bill using his influence. So, financial and political leverage concerns.
Interpreting silence as the biggest expression of fear is, well, it's a bold claim from the source. They really see that lack of response as calculated, driven by worry about Musk's power.
That seems to be their take. And the source also brings up an interesting concept around here, something it calls semantic infiltration.
Semantic infiltration, what's that about?
It's a term the source attributes to Daniel Patrick Moynihan. And the basic idea is one side in a debate or a conflict manages to force the other side to use its chosen language to describe things.
Ah, like controlling the narrative by controlling the words used.
Pretty much. The source gives a couple of examples. They mention Rupert Murdoch calling his channel Fox News, and the source claims the news part is deliberate semantic infiltration. A lie, they say, to make people accept the term.
Okay. And a more relevant example.
More directly to this situation, yeah. The source points to another network that reportedly called the spending bill the Big Beautiful Bill.
Big Beautiful Bill.
Okay. And the source presents that as successful semantic infiltration by Trump getting his preferred positive phrase used by others.
Got it. So how does Musk fit into this idea?
Well, the source then positions Musk's really strong term, disgusting abomination, as a direct head-on collision with Trump's reported phrase, Big Beautiful Bill.
Ah, like a counter-semantic move.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Their analysis is that Musk's term provides an alternative phrase, a weapon, maybe. They suggest Democrats now have the option to pick up and use Musk's disgusting abomination language when they're critiquing the bill.
Interesting. Using the opponent's language or maybe providing a powerful alternative as a strategic thing. The source also notes a follow-up tweet from Musk, right, where he elaborated a bit.
Yeah, he got more specific about his issues with the bill. He tweeted that it will massively increase the already gigantic budget deficit to $2.5 trillion and burden American citizens with crushingly unsustainable debt.
Okay, focusing on the deficit and debt, what's the source's commentary on that tweet?
Well, the source jumps on this, claiming that Musk's statement is exactly what Democrats have been saying about the bill and the deficit.
Ah, so they're framing it as Musk echoing Democratic talking points?
Pretty much. The source asserts that historically, going back to the 80s, Republicans have always increased the national debt, while Democrats have always reduced the deficit that Republicans created. They present this as a cycle.
Okay.
And their take is that Musk only now realizes this pattern regarding deficits and debt, as if he's just catching up.
So the source frames Musk's concern about the deficit not just as aligning with Democrats, but also suggests he's sort of late to the party in understanding this historical pattern they describe.
That seems to be the implication. And the source also throws in this other detail about Musk's reported demeanor. Remember, he was in the Oval Office the week before?
Right, before the reported firing.
Yeah. The source says he looked pained and absent-mindedly, like he was seemingly unable to even listen to or look at Trump while Trump was speaking.
And the source connects this to the later events.
They speculate, basically. They suggest that maybe this earlier discomfort, this looking pained, might have been because Musk knew right then and there that he was about to be or was in the process of being effectively fired.
So they're linking that perceived earlier physical reaction in the Oval Office to the later public outburst, tying it all together.
Yeah, trying to build that consistent narrative around the firing being the key.
Okay, shifting gears just a bit. The source also highlights another tweet from Musk, one that sounded more like a future political threat or call to action.
Right. He tweeted, "In November next year, we fire all politicians who betrayed the American people."
We fire all politicians. How does the source interpret that one? It sounds broad.
They get very specific with their interpretation. According to their analysis, all politicians in that tweet means, first, Trump, the person who, in the source's view, apparently fired him.
Okay, so firing Trump.
And second, every single Republican member of the House of Representatives who voted for that spending bill, all except the two who didn't vote for it.
Wow, so almost the entire House GOP caucus plus Trump.
That's how the source reads it. They interpret this as Musk explicitly saying Trump betrayed the American people by pushing for this bill.
But there's a catch in their interpretation, isn't there?
Yeah, a crucial one. The source characterizes Musk's version of this betrayal, why he thinks Trump betrayed people, as being purely self-interested, meaning they see his call to action, his anger, as primarily driven by his own situation, the perceived slight of being fired, rather than some broader principled stand against the bill's content itself. It's personal for Musk, according to the source.
Got it. They see it as rooted in personal grievance. The source also includes reactions from other political figures, right? How did they respond, according to this analysis?
Yeah, they bring in a couple. For example, Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House. He apparently responded by calling Musk terribly wrong about the bill.
Okay, direct disagreement.
Right, and the source reports Johnson mentioned having a long conversation with Musk, like over 20 minutes, where Johnson apparently extolled the virtues of the bill, tried to sell him on it, and Johnson felt Musk seemed to understand by the end of it.
Ah, so Johnson thought he'd made progress. How does the source use that?
Well, the source uses Johnson's account to highlight what it sees as a total disconnect. They contrast Johnson's belief that, the problem was solved, the conversation worked, with Musk's later tweet, which the source interprets as basically calling for politicians like Johnson to be defeated and, quote, driven out of Washington forever. So the talk didn't stick, clearly.
Yeah, it seems like a big gap between Johnson's perception and Musk's later actions, at least as the source presents it. Any other reactions mentioned?
Then there's John Thune, a Republican senator.
Okay.
According to the source, Thune expressed some concern.
Concern about what?
Thune reportedly worried about Musk potentially helping to tank this bill and whip members against it, using his influence again. And Thune also reportedly felt kind of helpless, like he couldn't really defend Republican senators if Musk decided to fund primary opponents against them. He worried about those potential campaign attacks fueled by Musk's money.
So the source presents Thune's reaction as sort of illustrating the real-world political anxiety that Musk's public statements can actually generate among established politicians. They take him seriously.
Exactly. They see it as proof of his perceived leverage. And then finally, the source circles back to that NBC News reporting it mentioned at the start.
The reporting about him being effectively fired.
Yeah, but another detail from it. It notes that this NBC reporting also stated Elon Musk is very disappointed that the bill doesn't include electric vehicle tax credits.
Ah, the EV tax credits. Okay. And how does the source use this detail?
Well, the source uses this for its pretty powerful concluding interpretation. It connects the absence of those EV tax credits directly to Musk's whole public stance against the bill.
So they're suggesting that was the real reason for his anger.
That's the claim. The source claims Musk is actually happy to run up the budget deficit as long as we're doing it in a way that makes more money for him, like including those electric vehicle tax credits would have done.
I see. So the deficit concerns he tweeted about were secondary or maybe even insincere in the source's view. The real issue was the lack of EV credits for his business.
That's the strong implication, yeah. That's how they frame it. And based on this perspective, the source's final word on Musk is pretty sharp.
What do they say?
The source concludes by calling Musk, quote, the abomination.
Wow. Okay. So just to be crystal clear, we're presenting that as the source's specific, very strong claim and interpretation stemming directly from their analysis of the situation.
Absolutely. That's their concluding punchline. Based on connecting the dots the way they did the alleged firing, the spending bill criticism, and the missing EV credits.
Right. So that was our deep dive into this particular source's analysis. We've sort of tracked its points, haven't we? From that initial Twitter outburst.
Yeah, explored its interpretation of the reported context, including that whole idea of Musk being effectively fired.
Examined the source's take on the really strong language Musk used against the spending bill.
Looked at how the source interpreted the political reactions, brought in that semantic infiltration concept.
And landed on the source's claim about potential financial motivations, specifically tied to those EV tax credits.
Yeah, we've tried to pull out the core analysis and the specific details that this source presented regarding this whole public interaction between Musk and Trump and the surrounding political context, all viewed through the particular lens of this one source.
It's definitely a really specific and you could say quite opinionated look at how one observer interprets a public conflict between these, really powerful figures.
For sure. Connecting it to personal history, perceived slights, specific policy details or lack thereof, the strategic use of language, and ultimately potential financial self-interest. It weaves a lot together.
So thinking about everything we've just unpacked from this source, given its claims about the personal and financial dynamics it sees at play, from the alleged firing and the past struggles it mentions, to that focus on EV tax credits as maybe a key motivation, what does this particular conflict, as described and interpreted by this source, reveal about the forces shaping political discourse and alliances among powerful individuals today?
It certainly offers a very specific perspective to consider.